Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Coffee and Clarity. Welcome back to Coffee and Clarity. I am really glad that you all are here as always. And as I always start, I want to let you know that this is not a webinar, not a training, and it's not a sales call. This is our table. And this is the one place each week where we can slow down, tell the truth, and talk honestly about what it looks like to build drift funnels and build our businesses with clarity, steadiness, and peace. So, once again, thank you for being here with me on this morning. Today, I want to talk about leadership, but not leadership as a title, not leadership as being the person at the top. No, I want to talk about what leadership looks like when something goes wrong. Okay. It's not easy. I'm sorry, it is easy to feel like the CEO when things are working, right? It's easy to feel good, when the numbers look good, when the team is moving, when the product is improving, when customers are happy, when everything seems to be going in the right direction. But leadership gets tested when there's a problem, when something's not working, when there's confusion, when something breaks, when the results aren't what they should be, and when the company needs a decision, you know, or when everybody is looking around wondering, what are we going to do about this, right? And what I'm learning is that when you are the leader, you can't just point at the problem, right? You've got to take responsibility for moving it toward a solution. And that doesn't mean that the leader has to personally do every task. Doesn't mean that the leader has to know everything, and it doesn't mean every problem happens because of the leader. But it does mean the leader cannot separate themselves from the responsibility of getting the problem addressed. Hold on just one moment. Okay. Sorry about that. Now, I am grateful for Antonio because I have watched him do this. When something is wrong, um, he doesn't uh, he doesn't complain. He doesn't sit and complain about what should have happened, right? He starts thinking, what is actually happening? What's causing it? What needs to change? Who needs to do what? What's the plan? And what happens next? And watching him lead that way is teaching me something about the kind of CEO I want to become. Not a CEO who only notices problems or a CEO who only talks about problems, but a CEO who takes ownership and moves. So, my thought for this week is this: a leader does not just identify the problem, a leader owns the responsibility to move it forward, to move it toward a solution. And so today, I want to talk about what I'm seeing, what I'm learning, what I'm wrestling with, and what I'm appreciating as I think about responsibility, action, planning, and what it really means to lead when the company needs something fixed. Okay, so let's jump right in. What I'm seeing. All right, what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing is that there is a big difference between noticing a problem and owning a problem. Anybody can notice, right? Anybody can say, this isn't working, or we have an issue, or something needs to change, or somebody needs to fix this. But leadership asks a different question. Leadership asks, what are we going to do about it? And even more importantly, what am I responsible for doing next? I think that's where leadership becomes real. There's a temptation, especially when a company gets larger, to push responsibility away from yourself. Maybe it's the team, or it's the software, maybe it's the market, or maybe it's the customer, or maybe it's timing, right? Or maybe it's somebody who didn't follow through, right? And sometimes those things really are part of the problem. But even if they are, the leader still has to decide what happens next. Blame doesn't fix anything. Clarity does. Action does. Planning does. And follow through does. And what I've been seeing in Antonio is that he moves toward the problem. And that matters a great deal to me. He doesn't pretend that it's not there. And he doesn't protect his ego by acting like everything is fine. He never does that, right? He looks at it, he studies it, he asks questions, and he works to understand what's actually causing the problem. And then he starts building the response. And that is teaching me that responsibility isn't just saying, yes, this is my company, but the responsibility is really saying, because this is my company, I can't ignore what's happening inside it. That is a different level of ownership. And I'm seeing that leadership isn't always glamorous, right? Sometimes it looks like reviewing something again. Sometimes it looks like asking uncomfortable questions. Sometimes it'll look like changing something you were sure would work, right? And then sometimes it looks like admitting that the current plan is not producing the result you expected. And also sometimes it looks like staying with the problem longer than you wanted to. But that's part of the job. So that's what I'm seeing, right? Take a little sip. What I'm learning. What I'm learning is that taking responsibility is not the same thing as taking the blame for everything. And I think that distinction is important. Responsibility says this belongs to my area of leadership, so I'm going to make sure it gets addressed. Blame says this is all my fault. Those aren't the same things. A leader can take responsibility without pretending they personally caused every problem. And what matters is that the leader doesn't use the fact that someone else contributed to the issue as an excuse to stop leading. If a team member made a mistake, I still have to ask, was the expectation clear? Was the process clear? Was the training there? Was the right person assigned? Was there accountability? Was I paying attention? And what needs to change so this is less likely to happen again? That, ladies and gentlemen, is leadership. And I'm also learning that taking action without a plan isn't enough. You can move fast and still move in the wrong direction. So when something needs fixing, I'm learning to slow down enough to understand the problem before throwing activity at it. That's what Antonio's teaching me. So we're asking the questions, what are we actually trying to accomplish? What's currently preventing it? What's the highest leverage thing we can legitimately do about it right now? And those questions matter because sometimes we treat symptoms like they are the problem. We keep adding more work, adding more meetings, adding more messages, adding more urgency. But the real constraint is still sitting there. And if we don't understand the constraint, we can be extremely busy and still not solve anything. And that's one of the things Antonio is also teaching me. Don't just react, diagnose. Don't just say, we need to fix this. Ask the question, what exactly is broken? And then ask, what's the plan? And then ask, who owns the next action? I think those questions are changing the way I see leadership. A plan turns concern into movement. A plan gives people direction. It creates accountability. It gives you something to measure. And a plan allows you to come back later and ask, did this work? And if it didn't, you learn and then you adjust. And that is different from just hoping the problem goes away. So that's what I'm learning. What I'm wrestling with. What I'm wrestling with is that responsibility can feel heavy. Because once you stop saying somebody should do something about this and start saying, I'm responsible for making sure something happens, the weight changes. Now you've got to make decisions. Now you got to follow through. You may have to have a difficult conversation. You may have to admit something isn't working. You may have to change a process you created. And you may have to ask for help, right? And I think sometimes we avoid ownership because ownership removes excuses. So if I keep the problem outside of me, I can keep explaining why it exists. But once I own my part in solving it, I've got to move. And that can be uncomfortable. And I'm also wrestling with the fact that being a leader means people are watching how you respond, not just what you say, how you respond. If I panic every time something goes wrong, that affects the team. Antonio tells me all the time, I can't have a CEO who's fearful all the time. He knows me and fear, we go together and I'm trying to break us apart. Okay, I'm trying to break us up. So he understands that. He just told me that recently. So I know if I panic every time something goes wrong, that's going to affect the team. If I blame people publicly, that affects the team. If I avoid decisions, it affects the team. And if I act like the problem is beneath me, that affects the team. But if I can say, okay, this is what's happening. Let's understand it, build a plan, and then let's move. That creates a different environment. It tells people we don't have to pretend problems don't exist. We just have to be willing to face them. And that's something I'm still learning. I'm learning how to respond without immediately reacting, how to ask better questions, how to take responsibility without carrying everything alone, and how to know when I need to solve something myself and when my job is to make sure the right person owns it. Because leadership, that doesn't mean doing everything. It means making sure the right things get done. And that distinction matters. So that's what I'm wrestling with. Finally, what I'm appreciating. What I'm appreciating this week is having an example right in front of me. I am grateful to Antonio because I get to watch him lead in real time, not just when things are easy, when there's a real problem, when something needs attention, when something needs to be corrected, and when a decision has to be made. I get to watch how he thinks, how he asks questions, how he looks for the actual constraint, how he creates a plan, and how he moves from talking about the problem to doing something about the problem. And I appreciate that because I'm learning what kind of CEO I want to become. There's a difference between learning leadership from a book and watching somebody lead through something real. Watching somebody says, this is a problem, and then immediately begin asking, how do we fix it? That teaches you something. It teaches you that leadership is active. It teaches you that responsibility isn't just something that you say, it's something that you demonstrate. And then I also appreciate that he doesn't just fix the problem and leave me out of the process. I'm learning from the process. I'm learning how to think, how to look at a problem differently, and I'm learning not to stop at frustration, but to move toward clarity. And I think that's one of the greatest things a leader can give another leader, not just an answer, but a way of thinking. And because eventually I need to be able to look at the problem and do the same thing. I need to be able to say, what's happening? What's preventing the outcome? What can we actually do? What's the plan? Who owns it? And when do we check again? And that's the kind of CEO that I'm becoming. And I'm very grateful that I have somebody showing me what that looks like while I am becoming her. So now, ladies and gentlemen, this is my favorite part of the call. I want to hear from you. And so I'm going to put I always ask four questions during the call at this time. And so I'm going to put the four questions in the chat one at a time. And like I always say, you can either answer the questions in the chat if you're unable to unmute your mic. But if you are able to unmute your mic, you can go ahead and answer the questions out loud. Now, you may not have an answer to this question this week. A question may not, pertain to you, but if it does, we'd be happy to hear from you. So here is our first question. When something goes wrong in an area you lead, is your first instinct to own it, explain it, avoid it, or blame something outside of yourself? I'll ask that again. When something goes wrong in an area you lead, is your first instinct to own it, explain it, avoid it, or blame something outside of yourself? We're always real at this ta at the table, and this is a no judgment zone. So we talk things out so we can hear everybody's perspective. Go ahead, Otis.
That's a good question, and I know it does apply to all of us. And I think my answer would be none of the above. The one thing I do is try to understand what happened and why it happened. I know that in the Army during my experiences, and I thought this worked very well. Anytime any mission went on, any mission, successful, unsuccessful, or whatever, you at the end you do an AAR. And the questions they ask is what happened, what was supposed to happen, and where's that delta, right? And what can we do to make it right? And I think that's pretty much my thinking. What happened, why it happened, and what can I do to change it? And also, one thing is try not to let your emotions take over. It's very easy because that'll get wound up real fast. That's what I
Thank,
have.
thank you so much, Otis. Yes, okay. Yeah, well, I was waiting on Otis to tell people what Delta meant. So yeah, when he said where's the Delta? Yeah, I think that's an Army thing because I think Antonio knew what Delta meant. Only reason I knew what Delta meant is because I went to college. Anyway, Delta means change. So so thank you so much, Otis. Anyone else want to answer question number one? I always like to give people time before I head to the next question.
Is
Okay.
MP?
Hey, MP, go, what's going on?
Man, everything is great. Everything is awesome. I'm super happy. Grateful to be alive today. But yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, I mean, we all been in network marketing. They always say, I always remember it says, bad news goes down, but bad, if you have a problem, bad news goes up to figure out what the problem is, but never down. And so, yeah, coachable and teachable every day definitely is a aspect. And also, the most important thing is owning when you know that, hey, this don't work, or I need to work on and improve on something. So definitely always move into that course to make sure that we don't know everything, and we've got. That's why if we're the smartest person in the room, definitely got to change that. And so being mentored by the great coaches and like Antonio and yourself and everyone that contributes to your success. But you get out of the weeds, stay out of the weeds. So that's what I got.
All right. Thank you so much, MP. All right. Okay. Making sure we don't have anyone else want to answer the first question. Okay. So we're gonna move. Oh, go ahead, Adrian. I saw you unmute your
Now,
mic.
good morning, good morning. I was just saying that I like how Otis said that the understanding is always good before you can jump on anything. You kind of do need to understand what was supposed to happen, like the point. But really owning it and then making sure that it is your thing, and then you figure it out because it is yours. So owning it.
Oh, thank you, Miss Adrian. Glad to have you on. Okay. So our next question is this. What problem in your business, work, or life have you been talking about that now needs an actual plan? What problem in your business, work, or life have you been talking about that now needs an actual plan? Right now, it may be nothing, that you've been talking about that needs an actual plan. Or maybe it is
I
something.
got look, I
Go ahead.
got something.
Go ahead,
I,
Adrian.
I got something for that. I'm working on really putting a march together. Uh, it's like the idea of a march all across America, but it's going to start in Philadelphia and kind of go. So the plan is now in the process of putting together the group, to actually sit with like-minded people, not even like-minded people, actually different people. That's the problem, putting the different people at the one table. But I believe it. I've been seeing it. I said it, and I think this is it. So that's what I've been working on, putting it together.
All right, now, Miss Adrian. Well, we're going to be excited to hear all about it. And it all coming together. Thank you, Miss Adrian. All right. Anyone else? I'll get question number 3 together. Anybody wants to answer question 2? All right. Uh, okay, it's that. We will move on to question 3. When you face a problem, how good are you at identifying the real cause instead of only reacting to the symptoms? When you face a problem, how good are you at identifying the real cause instead of only reacting to the symptoms? All right.
I think I'll answer that one because it's an
Okay.
illusion. I come off as excellent at that, but that's not the case. I don't know the answer to a single problem on the planet. I never do. And more than likely, since I run stuff, every problem I have is something I created. And you can't fix something you created. You just can't do it. We think we can, but you can't do it. So it looks like I'm a genius. No, I'm not. I read books. I read articles. I pause and I check my assumptions, which I'm coming back to that. Typically, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I just happen to be great at quickly figuring out what I didn't know very fast because there's always a higher consciousness out there. I don't know, if it's a spiritual problem, there's a Bible out there. If it's a programming problem, there's something out there, right? There's a Google search out there. There's a ChatGPT search out there at this point. So it's not me figuring out the problems. It is me getting out my ego, pausing and saying, okay, here's a problem. Let me go read. Somebody fixed this already. And then in those things that have not been fixed, then I'm able to figure out where people think it can't be fixed, which brings me to my last thing I said I was going to come back to, the assumptions. Typically, everything that I'm doing is always 1,000% correct, and it's still wrong because my math is correct. My 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 motives are correct. The solution is correct, but the shit still don't work because my assumptions were incorrect. And my ego made assumptions about something. And then I did correct leadership on those assumptions, correct leadership on that ego driven thing, correct leadership on not receiving new information. So all the numbers and the things work perfectly and don't work at all because my assumptions assume this thing instead of not making assumptions, looking at what it is, figuring out doing 16,000 tests first and then doing it. So that's the answer. Very long, but that is the answer. I don't know nothing. And every time I do know something, I typically got to go in and fix it because I knew it going in, which is the problem. Things change every moment. By the time I finish, something already changed. There you go.
Okay, thank you, Antonio. All right. All right. Anyone else before we move on to our final question? Okay. Last question. Who has modeled strong leadership for you by showing you how to take responsibility, create a plan, and move toward a solution? Who has modeled strong leadership for you by showing you how to take responsibility, create a plan, and move toward a solution? Mine is Mr. Smith. Yeah, he always does that.
SMP.
Okay, hey, Pimpy.
Yeah, I got a lot of different mentors, but I've got a lot out of Mr. Antonio with different trainings that he's done, mindset, his book, meditation that I've been doing that he has on YouTube has really been helping me out. And just, again, being the smartest person in the room is not good. So always having a health coach. I got somebody helping me out with my meal plan and things of that nature. I think it's very important to have that. So always looking to Find somebody that's already mastered something. And if you find somebody that does something that you want to do or you want to master it, you follow the master and copycat and pay closely attention to instructions.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, V. Great words. All right. Anyone else who's modeled strong leadership for you by showing you how to take responsibility, create a plan, and move toward a solution? All right. All right.
I guess I can say that I learned a lot from Antonio. Um, it is funny because he was really, really, really before it happened. I remember I'm always talking about being in front of it, like be the first to do it. And when I don't know, I they was talking. I couldn't hear people. I could hear Antonio. So I will say that Antonio was Antonio was that guy. And then when I left Antonio, I don't want to say left Antonio, but like actually started to try to focus on my heart because I remember there was something that he said a long time ago about if your heart's fucked up, nothing's going to really work. So, in my backing away and actually paying attention to the people that were in my surroundings and not like in the boxes. Or like I wanted to be in Texas, like I didn't want to be in PA, I wanted to be in Texas. So when I realized that, okay, I'm not in Texas, so I got to take what Texas gave me and put it in PA, then you start watching. Like I could say that my mom is a person that I never really liked to watch what she did, but it to give respect where respect is due. She is one of those that does, and then people bring all kinds of problems to her so that she can do that as well. So I have seen the model, but what I learned from Antonio is that what people are talking about today Antonio was talking about years ago, and I just be like, I should have really did that shit. Like MP said, like shit. I was with him though. So at the end of the day, I will have to give Antonio that because when people start talking that chat GPT shit and everything like this brand new, they don't know how to prompt. I'm thinking shit, I got notes from that. And when I look back at my notes, I just be like, damn, I was chilling for a minute. Like, but I will say it's good to like come back to the surface of things and so I will give Antonio that. And to even know that he's still here trying to be in front of something, still trying to help other people, and then leading with the fact that I don't know what the hell I'm talking about is like, what? But we be on every word. So even that is good leadership because you give everybody the opportunity to breathe in what it is that you're doing. So when it comes down to watching a leader, I will say that Antonio T. Smith Jr. he has been a good leader. Good job, sir.
I am
Good
glad
to
you.
see. Good to see your face, sir. I ain't seen you in a minute.
I'm
Yeah,
glad
Sorry,
you
y'all.
I
on
sure
this call.
appreciate you.
Glad you on this call, Adrian, this morning. Thank you
That's
so much.
the Adrian. Ain't another
That's
Adrian. All
it.
them other
No.
Adrians is imposters.
Yep. Yes.
Look, I'm sorry. I'm cussing and stuff. It's early in the morning. I got my coffee. This should be like coffee, sip, and smoke because we is in it. It's morning time. Good morning to you.
All right, ma'am. Oh, goodness. Thank you so much. What I want us to think about this morning is that responsibility is not punishment. It's actually power. Because once you accept that something is yours to address, you can actually begin changing it. You may not control everything that caused a problem. You may not control every person involved, and you may not control every circumstance. But you can still ask, what can I legitimately do from where I sit? And that is where movement begins. Maybe you can't solve the entire problem today, but can you diagnose it? Can you make the decision? Can you create a plan? Can you assign the next step or make the phone call or ask the question? Can you stop pretending that somebody else is going to come rescue the situation? That, ladies and gentlemen, is leadership. And so as we close, here's the thought I want to leave with you this week. A leader does not just identify the problem. A leader owns the responsibility to move it toward a solution. When something is wrong, leadership doesn't mean pretending you have every answer. It means being willing to face what is true. It means saying this needs attention. This is what we know. This is what we do not know yet. This is the plan. This is the next step. And we are going to keep working the problem until we understand how to move it. And that is what I appreciate about Antonio. He's teaching me that when the company has a problem, being CEO means you don't stand outside the situation waiting for somebody else to take responsibility. You move toward it, you ask questions, find the constraint, build the plan, take action, and then you learn from what happens next. So this week, if there's a problem sitting in front of you, don't just ask, whose fault is this? Ask, what is my responsibility now? And then ask, what's the highest leverage thing I can legitimately do about it right now? And after you ask those questions, move. Because leadership isn't proven by how well you describe the problem. It's proven by what you're willing to do once you see the problem. Thank you again, as always, for spending this part of your morning with me. And thank you for bringing your real self into this room. As always, I am grateful that we get to build together, and I will meet you back here next week at the table. Same bat time, same bat channel. This is your girl Grace. I will see you at the top, not from the top. Everyone have a great Monday and a wonderful week. Love you, everybody.
Love you more.
Love you.